Synergies everywhere. Good afternoon, you totally amazing women. You're laughing. You are amazing. I was floating around listening to some of your conversations, and wow, conversations that matter. So you feeling connected? Ooh. You feeling connected? You feeling energized? Are you feeling full? Okay. This is this glorious period of time. You've just eaten a meal. And all that wonderful blood that's been sitting up in your brain, helping you feel really alert and really engaged. Where is it going? Southbound. Okay, yes. It's heading right to your stomachs. Meanwhile, some of you are sitting in these cushy, comfortable, I know you love them, chairs. The room is something north of 65. I'll bet you just want a nap, don't you? You know, in the world of speaking, this is called the death slot. Truly, it is. The audience just had a meal, and they're preparing to flatline. They go comatose. But this I know just from a few hours of spending with you that you are no ordinary audience, right? Right? That's right, and this is not an ordinary venue. We have Starbucks. I will go to the ends of the earth for a Starbucks, I just want you to know. So, we need to keep our energy flowing, and I'm going to try to be as high energy as I can to keep you awake, and I want to make a deal. You guys keep the caffeine flowing, okay? Drink as much coffee as you want, and I'll try to keep you awake on my end. This is coffee talk. You do coffee, I do talk. We'll try to make magic. Yes? Yes? All right. Awesome. Now that we got that logistic out of the way. I absolutely love being with women. And I started developing this passion when I was in corporate America, and then it just grew from there. And now I travel around, and I find moments like this to be the ones that fill me up, that give me hope, that give me inspiration, and plenty of fodder for all kinds of things that I can infuse back into my work. And I find that whenever women get together, like-minded, bright, they want to help themselves and they want to help others, wonderful things happen. Magic can happen if you let it. Magic can take the form of a partnership, a friendship, new contacts, clients, connections. It can take the form of a sponsor, a mentor, an advocate down the line. It can take the form of that aha moment where I say, didn't think about that part of my leadership or my legacy. Magic is just about anything that helps us transform. And after spending a couple of hours with you guys, I know that there is enough power in this room to touch and transform every single one of us. It's truly amazing, and it's truly transformative. So, a couple of weeks ago, I was perusing the Coffee Talk website. And I don't know why I didn't notice this before, but something just leapt out and hit me. And it was the theme, shaping futures through conversations that matter. Shaping futures through conversations that matter. How powerful. So much of that resonates with me. Now let's think about conversations that matter. Today, we're here talking about shaping our futures as professionals through conversations that matter relative to mentoring and connection. But if we take a step back and view it in a broader context, we can see that every future is shaped by conversations that matter. Business is nothing but a whole host of conversations that matter, right? People working with people. Foreign policy is shaped by conversations that matter. Families are raised and shaped through conversations that matter. Politics are nothing but conversations that scratch that. Conversations that matter lead to relationships that matter. And isn't that really what it's all about? When you strip it all down? Relationships that matter. Our careers and our companies are absolutely built on relationships that matter. And in order to be in solid relationship with others, we need to be in solid relationship with ourselves. Show of hands, how many have heard the saying, in order to love somebody else, you must first love yourself? Amen, sisters. That is a truism for a reason. Truly, it starts at the source. All solid relationships begin with solid relationship with yourself, and that same principle applies to leadership. In order to lead others well, you must first lead yourself from a place of centeredness, of self-awareness, personal power. And by that, I do not mean power over other people. I mean the kind of power that springs from here, from the center of who you are. So today, I'd like to share just 4 simple truths to help you embrace that personal power, your authenticity. Step into that power, and then in turn engage in conversations and relationships that matter. 4 simple truths I've learned from my own journey, having reinvented my career 3 times, and learned some hard lessons along the way. Defining moments, really, that you only know in retrospect. But I hope you find them to be helpful. The first is to let go of limiting beliefs. The second is to make choices that are aligned with who you are. The third is to leverage the power of your intuition and your intellect. And finally, stand in your own inherent worth. So, a few years ago, I took a leap. I exited a long-term corporate career and took that leap into the unknown to chase my dream, to be a speaker, writer, and to run my own consultancy. Well, conventional wisdom says that anyone who wants to have a successful speaking career needs to have a book first. It is like the great legitimizer. It's the credibility builder. So, on a crisp Tuesday morning, I sat down to write the book. I said, okay, loosen up, get myself ready, computer screen, and I wait. And I wait. And I wait. No inspiration and nothing but a blank computer screen staring back at me. So I think, okay, bad day, shake it off, and I come back the next day. Nothing. Days of nothing turned into weeks of nothing. I was so stuck. Have you guys ever been stuck? I mean, seriously stuck? I was just plain stuck. So I went out and I started buying every book possible on how to get the writing mojo going. And they were telling me all kinds of things, but there was one common theme. And do you have any idea what that advice was? I wish. The advice was, well, just start writing. Well, hello, that was the problem. Couldn't believe it. So then full-on panic set in, and true to form, I went into full attack mode. I started researching everything under the sun that could break writer's block. So I went medicinal. I went spiritual. I went old age. Can't get off the stage this way. I went new age. I went Johnny Walker Black. Sort of kidding. Okay, I learned some totally bizarre things when I was trying to break my block. One of them was this. Has to do with psilocybin. Does anybody know what psilocybin is? Psilocybin. Sounds like an antibiotic. Psilocybin. Okay, it is a wild mushroom. And I was told that if you drink a tea made from an extract of this wild mushroom, it will break your block. So I drank 3 extra cups a day because I was really ticked off. And I found that it unblocked other parts of me that I hadn't totally anticipated. I mean, the article said it was going to get things flowing, right? I am sorry. I am sorry. So then I tried the breathing techniques. And then I tried the mind-clearing techniques. Then I took tons of showers, because has anybody heard that creativity comes in the shower? Yes, I mean, there were like 3 different books dedicated to shower therapy. Creativity comes in the shower. So, okay, so how many of you have ever had dishpan hands? Oh, I gotta see them. Come on. Who's had dishpan hands? Okay, you know how gross that feels? I had dishpan body, okay? I had dishpan body because I took so many showers. Bottom line, nothing worked. I mean, nothing worked. And I was like desperate. So I talked with a friend. I was just about ready to give up. And she said, well, have you ever tried hypnosis? I said, no. And I thought to myself, am I really that desperate? Of course I was. So I went off to see a hypnotist, and his name was Mark Ashley. So I bound into his office. I leap onto his lazy boy recliner, lay that baby flat out, and I'm ready to go under. Like toot sweet, get me under. Mark isn't ready to take me there. So he walks on over to where I am, the lazy boy recliner, and he pulls the thing up, and he says, I just want to ask you a few questions first. And I'm going, ugh. So he asked me why I'm there, what brought me there, and I gave him the story, and he said, well, why do you think you have to write the book first? And I said, look, Mark, this is just the way the industry works, okay? So he says, okay, do you think there are any successful speakers out there who haven't written a book? And I said, probably, but they just got lucky. He said, well, do you think there are any successful authors out there who are flops as speakers? And I said, maybe. So then he said, if somebody called you today and asked you to speak, would you have anything meaningful to say? Yes, I said. Well, Mark Ashley sat back, and he looked at me long and hard, and it felt like an eternity. But he finally leaned into me and he said, well, what's the harm in giving it a try? Okay, sounds like pathetically simple advice, right? I can't explain it, but in that moment, something miraculous happened. I felt this surge of energy. It was like the floodgates of possibility had just blown open. I left that man's office, and within 2 months, I had my first speaking engagement, and it just went on from there. So my path was altered by a hypnotist who didn't even hypnotize me, for God's sakes. I mean, he changed my path. He changed my life by getting me to reframe, to look at things from a different perspective. Nothing about my circumstances had changed. It was my belief about my circumstances that had changed. See, I had drawn this box around myself. And all I had to do was take a giant eraser and erase all those lines. So I'm wondering what kinds of limiting beliefs you have about what you need to do, about what you need to have, about what you need to be in order to get what you really want. Could you be standing in your own way simply because you've drawn lines around yourself? Or maybe you've accepted lines that others have drawn around you that stand between you and possibility? Something to think about. If the answer to that is yes, then how can you begin to release and change those limiting beliefs? Well, first you can begin to accept that your own paradigm, your own belief system may be your greatest challenge right now. Stop and ask yourself, why can't I do X, Y, or Z? What are my excuses? Really strip them back. The second thing that you can do is to acknowledge that your options may come from places that you don't expect. Information, wisdom, data could come to you in the most unlikely circumstances. In my case, a hypnotist was the one who showed me, taught me that I had bought into what other people had said was the truth. And it wasn't necessarily the truth, at least not for me. That was a very, very unlikely source. I have to tell you, I am a pretty pragmatic individual, so to get that message from Mark Ashley was really quite defining for me. So limiting beliefs can be extremely strong, extremely powerful. They can govern our actions. And in fact, limiting beliefs have been the source and the topic of a lot of conversations in the leadership circles. Is anybody here familiar with McKinsey? McKinsey and Company, they're a really big consultancy, and they've been doing an awful lot on women's leadership in the last couple of years. Last year, they did a study, they released a study where they concluded that, I'm reading, I want to get the words exactly right, that limiting beliefs are the single most powerful and insidious force holding women back today. And they take these limiting beliefs and divide them into two buckets. First is limiting beliefs that other people have around what women can and can't do, their capabilities. So people outside us will say, oh, she's a woman, she's good in HR. She's a woman, she's good in communications. Staffy jobs, not line jobs. Women don't run operations, women don't run plants. So there's that embedded belief in people outside of us that says we can or can't do these things. The second one that is extremely insidious, our own limiting beliefs. And they cited some very interesting examples. A woman, usually, when she's interested in a job, will take a look at the job description, tick down, do I qualify, do I qualify, do I qualify? If they don't meet 90% of what is on that piece of paper, the assumption is, the embedded limiting belief is, I'm never going to get that job, might as well take myself out now. I'm never going to make the consideration set. Isn't that interesting? Let's contrast that to what guys tend to do. If they meet 40% of those criteria, guess what? I'm going for it, baby. I can learn that stuff. That confidence just kicks right in. But imagine 40% of a job description, they're going to go for it. We feel like we need nearly 100%, or we're going to pull ourselves out of the mix before we give ourselves a chance. It's like startling. Second example that they gave was that women tend to not ask for things that they want. You know, I'm really psyched about that opportunity in China. I know I could do a good job out there, but God, if I tell them that's what I want, they're gonna think that I'm being too pushy, it's going to be off-putting, I might as well just do a really good job, let my work speak for itself, and all the rest will... Okay then, giggles mean, yeah, I've been there. Oh yeah, I know somebody like that. Anyway, embedded limiting beliefs are huge. And so as soon as we can start to recognize those that are at play in ourselves, the faster we can move through them and move to that place of power that I talked about earlier. Really great story. Earlier this year, I did a piece for Forbes on a woman named Shelley Lazarus. Anybody familiar? I see some nods. Shelley is chairman of Ogilvy Worldwide. It's the largest advertising agency in the world. Well, early on, Shelley was told she would never become CEO unless she relocated overseas and ran at least 2 international operations. Well, Shelley has a long-term marriage, 40-plus years, 4 kids. Her husband's a pediatrician. His practice is based right outside their home. And she just wasn't willing to uproot all that. So she decided to go at it a different way. She asked to acquire all global clients and assume responsibility for managing their total lines of business from New York City. Now, she traveled her brains out. She was on conference calls till the dead of night, wee hours of the morning. It was not without sacrifice. But in the end, she got the experience she needed. And she got the CEO job. Her way. Her way. Now imagine if she had allowed those limiting beliefs to govern her and she had simply accepted the lines that people had drawn around her, she would have thrown in the towel before she gave it a shot. And she never would have become CEO and now chairman. I find that to be just an amazingly uplifting and inspirational story. So now let's take this idea of limiting beliefs and let's apply it to here. Coffee talk, conversations that matter, mentorship. What are the qualifications somebody needs to have to be a mentor? How far along do you really need to be in order to earn the right to give people advice? You wouldn't believe the number of people. I have a mentee network at NYU and Georgetown, grad students, mid-career. How many of them feel they are not ready or qualified to either be a mentor or ask for one? Oh, I'm not far enough along to have a mentor. Oh, no, I have to wait. It's like, well, what are you talking about you have to wait? Limiting beliefs. Some of my best mentors right now are 20-somethings. Go figure. So again, it's this shattering of the limiting beliefs that say, no, I have something to offer this person. We've just connected, and I know I shine in this particular area, and that's where they're trying to improve. Why can I not mentor? I can mentor somebody older than me, somebody younger than me. I don't have to have 30 or 40 years of experience in order to earn that right. Conversations that matter. Think about limiting beliefs and needing to shatter some of that chatter. Shatter the chatter. I kind of like that, actually. Shatter the chatter. But to start breaking all that down and have that really, heart-to-heart conversation that says, no, I really need to move out of this because these excuses aren't working for me anymore. So that's point number 1. Let go of those limiting beliefs that keep you stuck in place. So the second point I'd like to make today is the importance of making decisions that are aligned with who you are. And that means kind of knowing who you are to begin with. So how many of you have ever heard of the concept of getting in touch with your core? Sure, okay. So from the time I was, I don't know, maybe this tall, my core told me that I wanted to be a news reporter. We would have these neighborhood parties. We called them block parties back then. And instead of going out and playing hide and seek with all the other kids, I would literally roam around with a tape recorder, interviewing people, or grilling people. So I'd be running over where they were playing hide and seek, and I'd corner somebody and say, Janie, why exactly did you pick this particular hiding spot? Speak into the microphone. And then I'd put on my investigative hat, and I'd say, Mr. Fagan, I understand that somebody got caught taking the family car the other day. Can we talk punishment here? Shove the phone thing in his face. I mean, nobody escaped. I would like chase Mr. Davis. Okay, how many of you remember George Burns? Okay, little and so mild-mannered, didn't have the cigar, but he was like George Burns delivering milk, okay? I would chase him down. I'd be like, can you please tell me what happened if the milk goes sour? Do people get their money back? Speak in the microphone. Shove the microphone in his face. I mean, complete and utter pain in the neck. But I had this dream, and it really wouldn't quit. So I went at it from high school to college, internships and stringer jobs, and then I got my big break. I got a job at the NBC affiliate in Boston. And I have to tell you, I was living my dream. It was absolute heaven. And then on top of it all came the biggest story of the decade. A local teacher, her name was Krista McAuliffe, was chosen to be the first private citizen to go up into space on the Space Shuttle Challenger. Are you guys familiar with the story? Okay, great. Krista lived and worked in our station's viewership range. So we became the epicenter of coverage. Are you familiar with the idea of feeders? Okay, so our station was the feeder to the world, and the whole world was watching. Huge for those of us who were there at WBZ at the time. So we do all of this pre-event coverage, 8 months of tracking, living with Krista day in and day out. She had become, of course, a local celebrity, and she was amazing. She was like the quintessential elementary school teacher, like big smile. Do you remember her smile and her dimples? And an even bigger heart, if you can even imagine. So launch day comes, and we're gathered around these huge monitors in the newsroom, and we watch the Challenger lift off. Less than 2 minutes after launch, the Challenger explodes. It literally disintegrates right there before our eyes, right there on the screen, with Krista and 6 fellow astronauts on board. It was the greatest tragedy in the history of the space program. At first, the newsroom is dead silent. It's frozen. And then it erupts in this giddy, gleeful chaos. It is so hard to explain the feeling in that room that day. It was happy. A celebration. I mean, you have to remember, this was a news organization. So what started out as a really big story, the biggest story of the decade, had in that moment become a colossal story, international story. It had every element that gave it staying power as a story. So immediately, everybody springs into action. The news director starts doling out assignments. He says, I want you to camp outside our school, and I want you to get our students grieving. I want you to track down her best friend. See if you can get an interview. Remember, we want raw emotion. And then he turned to me and he said, I want you to find the family. I want you to find her parents. I want you to find her husband. I want you to find her kids. Find her family and get tears on tape. You got me? Tears on tape. And then I will, how some moments just absolutely stay with you? Well, this is one that will always stay with me. He grabbed me by my shoulders, and he looked me square in the eye, and he said, this story can make you. So, jump into the news van and off we go. And I feel this gnawing in my gut, and I'm thinking, ugh, nervous energy. So try to get a visual here. We are hiding in bushes. Hiding in bushes, cameras like sticking out of the pine needles so we could get the footage. We are balanced up on milk crates at the school, the back of the school, trying to get the cameras in the windows because the schools were blocked off to the media because they had grief counselors in with all the students for 4 days. But we needed to get the tears. We needed to get the tears, and sometimes without people even knowing, and then beam it up by satellite so the rest of the world could see. Deep inside, I knew that I had crossed a line. That feeling of wrongdoing was so visceral. I got to tell you, I felt like I was selling out. But I went at it like I always did, and I got those tears. So I got back to Boston, and I got a promotion. And then I quit. Walking away from something that I loved very much, a dream, was one of the hardest things that I have ever done. But that voice deep inside was so loud and so insistent, it wouldn't take no for an answer. You know, back then, I had no idea what core values were. But I learned what it felt like to be doing something that was in conflict with them. This was my defining moment in realizing that I needed to understand more about me so I could make better career choices, and let's face it, life choices that are aligned with who I am. And that's part of the insight I'd like to share with you today. The importance of knowing yourself well enough to make good choices that are in harmony with the authentic you. I'm talking about your authenticity, of course, your values. That's your underlying beliefs and convictions, the things you really care about, your strengths, what you are really good at naturally, your passion, what jazzes you, and finally your vision, what you really want, your end game. Taken together, this forms your authenticity, and I promise you, when you get clear on this stuff, and then you take steps to align your career and your life to be in harmony versus conflict, you will realize power, fulfillment, success beyond anything you can possibly dream of. Now, let's take this idea of authenticity and understanding yourself and bring it back to conversations that matter. Sometimes the most important conversations you can have are those with yourself. That internal monologue and dialogue that says, I need to figure this out, man. That's a conversation that matters. And let's talk about authenticity and understanding yourself as it relates to mentoring. You can be a much better advisor, a much better mentor to other people when you are centered and grounded in yourself. Because if you aren't, sometimes you can unwittingly put your stuff on your mentee. You can foist your value systems on them. You can foist your passion on them. And if you really have a lot of self-awareness going on and you get you can rein that back and be a better listener and a more objective purveyor of advice. That makes sense? Yeah. So let's think about this on the flip side. If you're a mentee, think about the productivity, the efficiency and effectiveness of a mentoring relationship if you come to that relationship already getting you. You know, have you ever heard the term garbage in, garbage out? So what happens in a mentoring relationship is just like so many others. You tell the mentor what's going on, you tee up your issues, and then together you work out, you know, what might be my best plan of attack, next steps, etc. Well, whatever is coming in, that's with your filter on it. So if you get yourself and understand what's going on better, you're going to be able to provide better information to that relationship, thereby enabling the mentor to help you more effectively. Does that make sense? Yeah. So authenticity, understanding yourself well enough and making choices that are aligned with who you are. Second point. How are we doing? We need any coffee? I haven't seen anybody get any Starbucks yet. That could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. Okay, so the third point I'd like to make is the importance of leveraging your intuition and your intellect in order to step into your power and have those conversations that matter. So, as I said earlier, I had the tears on tape situation and I decided to exit journalism. And I entered corporate America. And fairly early on, I became the first woman in the history of Specialty Materials Corporation to be on the president's staff and the executive leadership team. So every year, these mucky mucks from corporate would come in for this annual business review, and really big deal. I'll never forget my first one. So here I am, I'm newly promoted, I'm still trying to establish myself with the guys, and there are 8 of us, the executive leadership team, sitting around a conference table in this conference room planning for the big meeting. So our boss, the CEO, Dr. Paul Hoffman, was going around and he was divvying out the responsibilities. So he turned to one guy and said, Joe, I want you to walk him through the financials. Stan, you're going to do the 5-year strategic plan. Mike, take him through a tour of the R&D facility. And he goes around and around, and then he comes to me. And he said, okay, and Susan, you can take care of the food. Let's just be sure I'm clear here. He wants me to be the coffee lady. The coffee lady. Okay. Coffee may be fine here. I get it. Coffee's fine here. Coffee was not fine. Was not fine there. I was absolutely mortified, devastated. And in that moment, what did I do? I froze. I didn't know what to do because I wanted to be a team player. I'm newly promoted to this position. My boss just gave me this assignment, but I have to tell you what, right here in my gut, I knew this was not good. And my mind agreed. Here's what it was thinking. My boss did not respect or value me. My colleagues would never take me seriously. I was DOA, dead on arrival. My heart and my mind were in complete agreement, and they were screaming at me to do something. What that was, I had no idea. So I left that night, and I didn't know where to turn, so I went and saw my father. And I have to tell you, he was so cavalier about the thing, it infuriated me. He sort of looked at me like, duh. And he said, well, just go back and get another job. And I was like, you want me to quit and go find another job? And he goes, no, just go back and negotiate another role for the meeting. Really? I mean, Dr. Hoffman had given me an assignment, right? Who was I to challenge that, right? Has anybody ever had a situation like this? A few of us? So then my dad asked me, who are your allies? Didn't have a clue. Hadn't even given that any thought. Like most women, I went into work every day, put my head down, worked my brains out, and I never gave any thought to strategic relationships. So I went into work the next day, and I sat down with Mike, who was the guy who was assigned to do the tour of the R&D facility. Well, Mike actually was an ally. He was a friend. And he had been there for years and years and years and years. And he actually had done so many of these annual business reviews that they had completely lost their meaning. In fact, I think he was happy to trade roles with me to do the coffee. So I said, Mike, would you be willing? And he said, yeah, and he got where I was coming from, so that was great. So then I had to go see Dr. Hoffman. Well, the good news was that I went to the boss with a solution versus a complaint or a problem, and as we all know, that's the best strategy. But beyond that, actually, I had to help him understand my intuitive concern, that by assigning me the coffee role, that he was depositioning me, marginalizing me on a team that needed to take me seriously. So I sit down with Dr. Hoffman and I start my case. How do you think he reacts? Badly, not good. Well, he was flabbergasted. He was completely shocked. He said, oh my God, you are reading so much into this. You are so overreacting. Has anybody ever been told you're overreacting? I actually cannot lay all the blame on Dr. Hoffman's doorstep because you have to remember I was the first woman to be there. They probably didn't know what to do with me. And he had his own paradigm about what women did in the workplace back then. But I knew this conversation was on a road to nowhere, so that's when I had to engage my intellect. And I had to think to myself, how do I meet him where he is and get through? So I proceeded to explain that in order for me to succeed in the role he just promoted me to do, a newly created position that required really effective cross-functional collaboration with my peers sitting around the table, that I needed to be on equal footing. Otherwise, I was never going to get off home base with these guys. To his credit, Dr. Hoffman got it. And nothing like that ever happened again. So the big day comes. Corporate descends for this big annual business review. And as it turns out, the CEO of Textron, our parent company, ended up walking right alongside me through the entire tour of the R&D center. Consequently, I got on his radar screen. And 2 years later, I was recruited to corporate, and my career trajectory just went phew. So that one situation, the coffee lady situation, became an incredibly defining moment in my career. And it taught me so many things. Now, it's years and years from that moment, and I'm sure that very few of you ever come across that kind of gender bias. But let's face it, things happen every single day that minimize us, that diminish us. We're left out of that important strategic discussion. Our boss ignores our voice during a meeting and continues to listen to our counterpart at the other end of the table. We get passed over. We are asked to take notes. Anybody asked to take notes? So when these kinds of things happen, what do? Well, first we need to recognize a defining moment when it hits us. And usually it hits us first here in our solar plexus. Our gut knows before our minds do when something really significant is at play. So when that hits us in our guts, we need to know to engage our intellect, our smarts, and take action. Think strategically and take action. Do not let it sit. Secondly, and so important to the conversation that's happening here today, We need to cultivate allies and supporters. I am talking mentors, sponsors, advocates, peers, subordinates, influencers, relationships that matter. What would I have done without Mike? What would I have done without my dad? You know, it's interesting, this cultivation of relationships that matter is something women tend not to do well in the workplace. And I find it the ultimate irony, because we are the more relational of the genders, right? We actually are very artful relationship builders, but somehow there's this barrier that we face when it comes to building those kinds of relationships that matter in our workplaces. We somehow feel we've stepped over a line, that it's somehow icky. It's agenda. It's dishonorable. I don't know the psychology behind it. But boy, those relationships can become a pivot point in our careers. I try to play back what might have happened in that scenario without Mike and without my dad. And I just might have stayed silent, done the coffee, and been relegated to a third-tier member of the executive team for God knows how long. And that would have been my brand. You just never know. But the relationships are the things that matter. So it's understanding how to cultivate those relationships. And then the third piece of it is knowing when to ask for help and having that courage and that wisdom to ask for help. Another thing women don't like to do a lot of, particularly as they get higher up in the organizations. There are studies that show that the more senior the woman, the less likely she is to ask for help. And I can attest to this. I was the same way. And I don't know what it is. Maybe we think it's a sign of weakness. We haven't figured it all out. People are going to think less of us. So this is an important conversation that matters, is understanding that asking for help is actually a sign of wisdom. It's recognizing that no single human being can do it all, and it's up to us to surround ourselves with people who can fill in the blanks, who can complement our strengths, and give us that wisdom and guidance we need to make the best decisions possible in the moment. So we can tie this back to relationships that matter, conversations that matter, and mentoring. All tied back to being able to leverage your intellect and your intuition. As we know, when it comes to conversations and relationships, it's a combination of these things. You get a sense of people, right? You can detect bad energy, you can detect good energy. You kind of, the chemistry thing, it matters, and it happens here. And then what happens here? We need to understand now's not a very good time to approach somebody. Hey, I've been back to the well 5 times in the last 2 weeks. I need to put the skids on, things like that. So this intuition-intellect combination is so powerful in helping us manage those relationships that matter and those conversations that matter and step into our power. So again, point number 3, make choices. Leverage your intellect and your intuition in order to step into your power and stay there. Okay, so the fourth and final is the importance of standing in your own inherent worth. So, as I mentioned, at that big business review, the CEO of Textron walked alongside of me, and then I was recruited to corporate. So I make my way up through corporate, and eventually I'm the executive director of communications for the entire corporation. And I'm based in Providence, Rhode Island, which is where the headquarters is. And my boss, Mary, is based in Washington, D.C. So one morning I get a call from her assistant, Melissa, and she says, Mary wants to meet with you in D.C. So I said, oh, okay, when? And she said, tomorrow. I said, oh, that's kind of weird. So I said, well, what does she want to meet about? And she goes, oh, nothing in particular. She just wants to meet with you. So of course, immediately the alarm bells go off. And I said, well, I can do it any other day this week, but tomorrow I've got this big meeting in Florida. I have a corporate jet lined up, and I have all these outside people coming in. But I could do it the day after. I could do it Thursday. She goes, reroute the plane and stop in D.C. Okay, so for the next 36 hours, what do? I do not eat. I do not sleep. I do nothing but play back every mistake, every transgression, anything that could possibly have gotten me in trouble. Was it that I went over budget, that run-in I had with that guy from IT? What was it? Playing and playing and playing. So anyway, we have the meeting in Florida. We reroute the plane. So I'm on my way to her office, and I am nervous as all get out. You probably have been there. Okay, I have such wicked dry mouth that my lips are sticking to my teeth. I am sweating so profusely that I have these huge, dark, wet, gross circles on my silk blouse. Stains are still there, as a matter of fact. And so as I approach her building, I am trying to figure out how I'm going to tell my team that I've just been fired. So I arrive, Melissa greets me, no smile. She's usually chatty, total deadpan. She brings me to the conference room and sits me down. Mary comes in. She looks at me and she says, an announcement is about to be made. She has a piece of paper in hand. She slides it over to me. I take it in, and I begin reading. The board of directors of Textron, Inc. has named Susan Tardanico vice president and an officer of the corporation. I just sit there trying to process that not only have I been not fired, but I've just been promoted to the highest level at this company. And as soon as I can get that thought in, it's pushed out by all the words crashing into my head. I'm not worthy. I'm not ready. A wave of panic comes through my body like a freight train, and I think, I am over my head. I'm never going to cut it in this position. And deep inside, I felt like I had somehow duped the organization, pulled the wool right over its eyes into thinking I was better than I was. Now you got to think, Mary is still sitting across the table looking at me, and she is like, Sue, what is the matter with you? So I finally find my voice, and I say, Mary, I just don't think I'm ready. And she goes, are you kidding me? You have to be kidding me. And she has this belly laugh. No, I wasn't kidding. You see, I had always viewed the officers as a cut above me. Smarter, more capable, more talented, more deserving, more ready. So I get back to my office, the announcement is made, and emails start pouring in, and the phone's ringing off the hook, and one by one, each of the officers came in, and they were welcoming me and offering their support and whatnot. And I realized that they actually thought I belonged there. They thought I deserved a seat at their table. I was the one who was failing to appreciate my own inherent gifts and talents. 2 years later, another woman was made an officer. Morning her announcement goes out. I go plowing down to her office, shut the door, I give her a big hug, and I say, "You're going to be great." And you know what she says to me? "I'm not ready." "Thanks, but I'm not ready," is exactly what she said. Now it's my turn to go, "Are you kidding me? You have to be kidding me." If you knew this woman, so sharp, so talented, extraordinary. Extraordinary. As women, we struggle to believe that we are worthy. That voice kicks in, that negative self-talk that says, "Oh, no, I don't deserve that accolade. I don't deserve that promotion. I don't deserve that simple compliment." Have you ever heard those voices? Felt that way? We are so good. But this thing called confidence is so elusive. It stands smack dab between us and our power. Do you know that this is a well-documented, well-researched phenomenon? It's a syndrome. And it's called the imposter syndrome. Show of hands, how many of you have ever heard of the imposter syndrome? Some, not all. The imposter syndrome it's an affliction. And it's basically something that disallows women from believing that they are worthy of their success. I'm going to read you Wikipedia's definition of the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome is a psychological phenomenon in which people are unable to internalize their accomplishments. Despite external evidence of their competence, those with the syndrome remain convinced that they are frauds and that they don't deserve the success they've achieved. They dismiss proof of their success, passing it off as luck, timing, or a result of deceiving others into thinking they're more intelligent and competent than they believe themselves to be. In summary, those with the imposter syndrome are competent people who find it impossible to believe in their own competence. Ladies, please believe in your own competence. And I say this to you as I say it to myself. We are better than we think we are. The National Council for Research on Women recently published a report on what's holding women back. A key finding, and I quote, "Women must reject the overwhelming feelings of self-doubt that can cripple their advancement." Cripple their advancement. So stepping into our power begins with letting ourselves believe that we just might be as good. We just might be as capable. We just might be as deserving as others think we are. This is another example of that internal talk track, that internal conversation that matters, that we need to engage in when we say, "Whoa, maybe I'm just a little off track here in thinking that I'm not worthy." So I'd like you to do me a favor and repeat after me. I am worthy. Oh, Lord, no. I am worthy. One more time. I am worthy. Yes, you are worthy of every success, of every happiness. You are worthy of the help that's already there for you, of the praise that's on its way to you. You are worthy of conversations and relationships that matter. You are worthy of your best life. Your best life. So there we have it, 4 simple truths to help you step into your power, claim your authenticity, and have those conversations and relationships that matter. Let go of those limiting beliefs like those I had when I thought I needed to write a book. Make choices that are aligned with who you are, and that means understanding who you are to begin with. The lesson I learned when I was asked to get tears on tape. Leverage the power of your intuition and your intellect. Remember the coffee lady? And stand in your own inherent worth. Say no to the imposter syndrome. You know, these insights come from some pain. A lot of these moments weren't easy for me, and I know a lot of these moments aren't easy for you. And when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to believe that there could possibly be a silver lining, but there is. Have faith that there is. And as you move through it, if you can just pay attention and learn, you can literally feel yourself moving to higher levels of success, fulfillment, and gratification. I hope this has been a conversation that matters. And more than that, I hope that each and every one of you can step into that power that's inside of you and all around you. Thank you.